going to the Prophet with the same sin, confessing the same sin, repenting from the same sin, and then falling back into the same sin again and again and again. And at some point, it was no longer just the sin that exhausted him. It was the cycle. In Medina, people had started to recognize him, not for his worship, not for his knowledge, but for a pattern they could no longer ignore. Every time he fell into the same sin, he would be brought forward. Every time, without exception. And every time, the same process would unfold. Confession, punishment. Then life would continue until it happened again. At first, people tried to be patient. They advised him. They reminded him. They hoped he would change. But hope, when it keeps meeting the same outcome, begins to fade. And when hope fades, something else slowly takes its place. Expectation. People no longer asked, will he change? They started thinking, when will it happen again? Even he must have felt it. That heavy awareness of being known for your lowest moments. Walking through Medina knowing people don't need to ask questions anymore because they already know the story. The same sin, the same return, the same shame. One day, it happened again. He was brought forward once more. The punishment was carried out just as before. The gathering watched just as before. And then, but this time, it didn't last. A man among the companions, overwhelmed with frustration, said, "May Allah curse him. How often is he brought here for this?" Some stayed silent. Some agreed in their hearts, because repetition does something dangerous to the human mind. It turns a struggling person into a pattern. But then, everything stops. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ turned toward them and said, "Do not curse him." Silence. Not the usual silence after words, but the kind that feels heavy in the chest. Then he said, "By Allah, I know that he loves Allah and his messenger." In that moment, everything split into two ways of seeing a human being. One sees the sin and ends the story there. The other sees the struggle and refuses to erase what is still there underneath. The punishment had already been carried out. Justice was not denied, but something deeper was being protected. A believer is not equal to his repetition. A believer is not defined by his worst cycle. The man walked away that day carrying the same burden he always carried. The same sin, the same weakness, the same fear of falling again. But something had shifted in meaning. He was still seen as a believer, still known by Allah, still within mercy, still not reduced to his failure. And maybe this is why this story still survives after centuries, because it doesn't feel distant, it feels familiar. Not in the exact sin, but in the cycle. Trying, falling, regretting, returning, and fearing that repetition means rejection. But this story draws a line most people forget. A believer is not defined by how many times they fall. A believer is defined by whether they still return, because returning again and again and again still means the heart has not given up. And the companions learned something that day, not just about a man, but about how quickly frustration can blind a person. How easily repetition can erase mercy from human perception, and how dangerous it is to reduce someone to their lowest moment. Because Allah does not see only the fall. He sees the struggle before it, the regret
after it and the return despite it. And maybe the real question this story leaves behind is simple. When you see someone trapped in their own cycle, do you only see the repetition, or do you still see the believer trying to come back? And the sin he kept returning to was alcohol. But the story did not end there, because what remained was not just the sin, it was the man who kept coming back, falling, regretting, returning again, even when he knew people had stopped expecting anything from him. Some people sin in silence. Some people repent in silence. Some people struggle in silence. And not everyone who struggles is far from Allah. Sometimes the closest heart to Allah is the one that keeps returning after every fall, because despair changes how a person sees themselves. It makes them think the door is closed when it is still open. So if there is something you keep returning to, something you thought you would have left behind by now, remember this: you are not defined by how many times you fall. You are defined by the fact that you still return. And as long as you keep returning, you are still within mercy. And the fact that you are still returning is already proof that Allah has not turned away from you.